This is Line Talkers Podcast, Episode 6, Be the Light. Welcome to Line Talkers Podcast. My name is Kenny Adams, and I'm the host. So over the past few months, I've reflected back when I had this idea of starting a podcast about 3 years ago, and how that when I first brought the idea to my friend Kim, who lives out in California, she told me I should go for it. She pushed me, nagged me, she pushed me, she nagged some more. The nagging was relentless to push me to follow what I really wanted to do. And if it had not been for her, we would not be where we're at today with the show. I turned the tables on her a little bit and sprung this on her a few weeks ago that I wanted her to host her first episode solo. She is very much capable. She has a better voice than I do. She's smarter than I am. She's a lot better looking than I am. And so I had no doubt that she would do this and be 100% perfect with it. And she did. Her episode today, I asked her to sit down with someone who's very close to me. Jessica and I met about 10 years ago in California. I was in operations, she was in engineering, and by default, those of you in this business know that those two entities do not get along. She and I got along. We moved across the country together back in 2014. We work together still, and we get along. We haven't killed each other yet. We thought about it, talked about it a few times. We watch reruns of Forensic Files to see how we can get away with it. I'm just kidding. I've never been around anyone who works as hard as she does. She puts 110% in everything she does, work, home, and her volunteer work. I asked him to sit down with her. It was a little awkward me interviewing her, so I asked him to sit down with her. This is a good show, and I think you're going to like it. So here's Kim on her first show with Jessica in Walking in Her Shoes, Be the Light.
I'm here with Jessica Hendrickson, and she and I met several years ago at a company party. And I can already tell everyone that she's super smart and beautiful. I only know that she's a mom of two, that she works for a pretty big company on the East Coast now. I don't know. I guess I'll let you fill in any of the blanks that you want to, Jessica.
Thank you, Kim. Yeah, so I'm a mom of two. I have a 15-year-old daughter, Samantha. She's gearing up to get her license this May.
Ooh. So I have notes for you.
Excited.
Mine just got hers in October, and oh my gosh.
It's kind of bittersweet because, you know, as she asks, hey, can you drop me off here, pick me up here? It's like, of course, because you know that day is coming soon when you'll be handing them the keys and they, you know, won't need you to be on that drop-off pickup duty.
There's so many little conversations that you have when you're in the car that you forget about until you're not driving them around everywhere.
I have a 13-year-old son too, Justin. Never a dull moment with him. He's a great kid. And what's kind of neat about having a son is I never grew up with a brother. It's been a joy having a son.
How fun to have one of each.
Exactly.
Yeah, I only have one daughter. So she's like my one and only. And I don't know. I feel like you're lucky you get one of each, and you also get a second chance once she starts driving.
Yeah, and I can tell you, he's looking forward to her driving too, because I think he has this big notion that they're going to go cruising at night, listening to music and
I can imagine.
Friends.
All right, so when I met you, it was here in California. Like I said, that was several years ago. I want to say that was like 7 or 8 years ago at least. In the meanwhile, between then and now, you pretty much left town and you moved to Florida.
We've been in Florida for coming up on 6 years this April.
That's so brave. You guys just packed up all your stuff and went on a road trip. That's so crazy to me.
It's crazy to me too, looking back. Really excited. I'm an adventurous person and I love change. I love constant change. So I was very excited at the time back in 2014, having that new adventure, not quite knowing what we were in store for. Took us 9 days to drive across the country, brought a travel trailer and loaded up the cat, 2 dogs, 2 snakes, 3 fish, 2 kids, and put all of our furniture in storage. And it was in there for well over a year. That first year was just such a test of our endurance and questioning our ability and questioning our decision and test of our relationship. It was a
Oh, I
struggle.
can't imagine.
It definitely made us stronger, but there were times where we weren't quite sure if the path we were on if there was light at the end of the tunnel. I am not a native Californian. I was born and raised in Chicago. I grew up in a small town called Mount Greenwood, which is not too far from Evergreen Park. It's considered south side of Chicago. I lived about 15 minutes from downtown, but growing up, I didn't really get to spend a lot of time in downtown. I went to private schools from third grade up until my junior year of high school and elementary school. One of the things that I always looked forward to every quarter was we would take field trips to downtown and we would go to the Chicago Symphony. You know, is some of my most favorite memories now. There were so many other things that I thought would be more exciting to do, but those field trips to the symphony really had a significant impact on me, I think, now and looking back with kind of the career path that I chose. My grandparents lived 2 houses away from us growing up too. So I think it was very difficult on them when we let them know that we were going to be moving to California because my dad got a job opportunity out there.
So then you ended up in California your senior year, it sounds like.
I did public high school, which was very new. I had historically been in private schools up until that point. In fact, my junior year, I went to an all-girls Catholic school. So that was quite a transition then to go to a public school, back to co-ed in a town that I was unfamiliar with.
Tell me a little bit how you got involved in the utility business.
My sister, she was what was called a hiring hall utility clerk. She had told me about going and signing up at the local 1245, put down all of your areas of experience. I did that. I signed up and I started out as a hiring hall meter reader. My first position was over in San Luis Obispo.
Nice.
And I loved it. It was a great experience. I stayed at this little hotel called the Guardian Ad Litem. It seemed like during the week there was a lot of utility workers that were there, and the hotel would make dinner every night and we would gather out around the pool, and it was kind of really my first introduction into working into the utility. From there, I took an assignment a little bit closer to home out in Roseville, eventually was offered a permanent position. What's interesting, though, is I never had any plans for making a career within the utility industry. At the same time, I was preparing for my real estate exam. Just about the same time that I had found out that I had passed my real estate exam, I was offered a permanent position with the utility. Accepted the position with the utility company and planned to do real estate. For a while, I did, but then eventually I decided that I really enjoyed working for the utility, and I realized there was so many opportunities outside of meter reading and also opportunities to live in all of that territory. So I kind of focused on looking into different career options and going back to school and getting my bachelor's degree and eventually my MBA.
That's so cool. That's a great story. And then we fast forward a handful of years to today.
So as I'm editing this, I'm like any other male, I guess. We can't sit idly by and not interject our 2 cents worth at times. Most of the time for me, it is a weakness. I'm working on it, though. However, in this case, I wanted to add something about the next segment that Kim is going to talk to Jessica about. Hurricane Michael, a couple years ago, hit Florida, so 34 miles of wire down and over 100 lattice towers down. I know Jessica and myself, we don't ever want to get ourselves in trouble with a company or represent. Any of this information is found on the website, or you can Google it on the news. So neither one of us are speaking for the company, but just wanted to elaborate on the magnitude of this project that Jessica was the project manager on. So that's what you're getting ready to hear about. But you know me, again, we have to put our 2 cents worth.
And I have something I'd like to cover with you, and that is your career that you have established over there on the East Coast. I have a bit of a press release that is online that was put out after Hurricane Michael came through the area. Helicopter crews inspected the Florida Panhandle after Hurricane Michael. They were astounded to see more than 100 transmission towers on the ground toppled like dominoes. Hurricane Michael leveled more than 100 of these lattice-style transmission towers in a 34-mile right-of-way. The towers were spread over 34 miles of hard-to-reach swamp and farmland, so a fleet of helicopters were used to install the replacements. The helicopters will allow the installation 320 new steel poles faster and reach areas inaccessible by the truck. Now, I know you can't speak on behalf of the company, and I wouldn't want to cross that line, but Jess, can you tell me a little bit about your personal experience being a project manager
Moving from California to Florida, it really was very eye-opening on the emergency response. Very different levels. We deal with hurricanes here, and so that's just part of preparation on what we have to expect
Mm-hmm.
each season. But you never really can mentally prepare for the amount of damage that can be done. And if anything, it really is
Mm-hmm.
humbling, the power of Mother Nature, because all of your day-to-day effort, your home, your groceries, you take all that for granted when there's an emergency to that level. It was Category 5 hurricane. Flew this line to get, as with any project, you want to get that 1,000-foot level possible of what type of project that you're going to be managing. And then from there, you kind of use that as a gauge on where you need to get into the weeds and where you need to continue to elevate to make sure that the
Mm-hmm.
project is set up for success. A while ago, I talked about, what an impact going to the Chicago Symphony was on my childhood. And the one takeaway that I reflect on from that was always being in awe of the conductor. It's amazing how through whatever piece is being played, that conductor is the one
Mm-hmm.
who ties all of that together. The whole team that's on that stage playing their instrument and making that piece is so similar to what I think the role of a project
For
manager
sure.
does. You have a scope, you have a schedule, and you have a cost. And that's really what the project manager has to manage, but it's so much more than that. In something of that magnitude, you put together your team. Everyone on that team has a vision and they know what their role is. As the project manager, you work to ensure that the obstacles are removed for everybody to do their part in achieving that vision. In addition to that forward thinking, you work each task real time. So you're very much in the present moment to ensure that those list of activities that you're focusing on during that day, when your whole team is together doing their piece, is so critical, because you need to make sure that there's nothing else that team member is worried about, that they're just solely focused
Mm-hmm.
on what they need to do to
Yeah.
help contribute to that vision. But then at the end of the day, you spend that time thinking a little bit forward ahead of, okay, now what are the next set of things that need to be focused on, so that when we all come back together again tomorrow, that everyone will have,
Mm-hmm.
that you've thought about your safety, you've thought about where you're at with your cost, you've thought about with your plan. And is there anything that you're missing? Is there any risks that you may need to think about as well?
There are certainly so many moving parts to this huge machine, for you guys to get a project like this, even conceived and then alone executed, and then for it to be done in such a short amount of time. That was really incredible to read about. But I know that this area was really, really hit hard. Can you tell me a little bit about what it was like for you when you finally got up in the air and you were able to survey the destruction after the hurricane hit?
Once we hit that area, the first thing that you think of is your heart goes out to the people that endured that, seeing that these people's houses and businesses, the community there has a lot of mom and pop businesses and real small town, beautiful beach coastline. It's not heavily built up, commercialized. It wasn't an area where you see multi-story hotels. So very heartbreaking to see just the devastation that
Yeah.
community faced, and having their homes and their businesses gone overnight. Looking at that, I just felt really honored to be part of this project team, having that opportunity to make a dent.
So how do you go about in coordinating an effort this huge? And like what sort of team is assembled in the field and on the support side to just get the ball rolling?
The first thing that you do is kind of think through your plan, how you're going to tackle it, what type of resources that are going to be needed to be able to accomplish this, in addition to looking at what your targeted timeframes are going to be, and then also projecting what your
Mm-hmm.
costs are going to be. The next area that you really focus in on is getting the details of your activities. Start looking at what are going to be your longest timeframes.
You and your team's efforts, Jessica, truly changed lives for the better, helping so many others get one step closer to finding some type of like normalcy after experiencing so much loss and shock and devastation. I'm just so proud to know you, and you guys have done such great work. Just from me to you, I want to say thank you for you putting heart and soul into dedicating yourself to not just this project, but in everything that you do, because I think that us in the industry, whether you realize it or not, we make a big difference to people's lives. And I just want to say thank you and job well done.
Thank you, Kim.
Oh,
And
you're welcome.
I think that's probably the most rewarding thing that anybody ever wants to